and the pink land iguana. I'm so excited to be quilting this endangered species block of the month with you today. You can see I have already picked out my two colors. I'm going to be using Aurifil 2908. This was from the green sea turtle box in March, as well as Aurifil 2530. This from this month's box. I was feeling a little spicy with this hot pink, thought I would pull it out. But this month on the blog, we're talking about free motion quilting motifs in order to create natural textures on our animals. Now, you may remember from several of my blocks that we've done together already, the elephant, I used McTavishing to create the wrinkly skin. The red panda, I used paisleys to create the idea of a leafy tree. There were pebbles and smoky swirls behind our green sea turtle in order to create that feeling of the ocean, right? So for the blocks that we've been doing along the way, I've been taking into account the animal itself as well as the environment they live in when I plan out my quilting strategy month in and month out. Now, I don't always necessarily add lifelike texture, if you will, to both the animal and the background, but one or the other, I try to incorporate that. And this month, I thought I would share a few motifs with you and a little bit of that process. So here you can see I literally just did a Google search of pink land iguana. I wanted to get an idea of the textures on this guy's skin as well as the environment that he lives in. And this is a photo that I found particularly useful. This kind of sparse, bare background. And you can see we've got very scaly, texturous skin, all right? And out of that, I chose to use two different motifs as part of my quilting plan. So I've chosen to use a meander in the background. This is the second time I've done a meander in the background. I did the same thing with our elephant. And here it's because I really just want that background kind of like behind the elephant to shrink back, not steal the show. I did decide to use a slightly contrasting thread so that there'll be a little bit of texture and a little bit of visual interest, but nothing too crazy. And then here I'm going to do some stitch in the ditch around our iguana's face. This is very heavy on the piecing. We've got a lot of bulky seams in this area, so I'm not going to try to add a lot of particular texture. But as we move into these larger areas, I'm going to use wood grain quilting to add that wrinkly textured surface to our iguana's skin. Now on the blog this month, you'll find several other motifs for reference that you may find inspiring. I hope that they encourage you to pull out a pen and paper or grab an iPad and do a little doodling of your own and create quilting plans that are a little bit different even from what I've created for you. All right, let's do some stitching. All right, rock stars, you can probably see there, I thought for a minute about where I wanted to get started. And I'm gonna start this meander right here off my green so that I don't have to bury that end when we're done, and then simply travel right up onto this background and begin making an easy meander. I thought through my quilting path a little bit before I got started and thought that this would be a good place to start in order to simply quilt my way around the iguana and then run off the batting over on the other side and not have to bury any extra thread tails, which is always a relief. I'm doing this as kind of a medium density meander. I don't want it to get too tight, have too much going on here in the background, but I also don't want it to be so big that we kind of lose the shape of what we're quilting. I'm gonna meander in between those toes there and use the ditch to get myself back out. And I'm just gonna continue all the way around to the other side. All right, we have taken a few minutes and gotten our meander here, and now I've switched to my pink thread, and I'm going to start by stitching in the ditch all the way around the outside of my iguana. And I'll probably take a little pit stop inside to his face. I'm kind of making this up as I go, to be perfectly honest. And what I mean by that is I know what I want the finished product to look like, but in terms of my specific stitching path, I'm going to see what makes sense as I'm going along. All right, now I am using my spoon foot here because it's what I had on my machine. If you are nervous about kind of freehanding your stitch in/near the ditch, then you can always switch to a walking foot or a piecing foot. Or if you have a ruler foot, you could use a ruler foot and use a quilting ruler to guide you as you're going along. All right. I am using this high contrast thread. This hot pink is going to really show up against a lot of my iguana here. But that's kind of the point. I figure if an iguana is pink, you know, it deserves some spicy quilting. It does mean that when I'm going along these areas where the pink and green meet, I'm probably going to err towards the pink side if I'm wobbling a little bit, because that will look more natural even against this light pink than if I go wandering off into my green with hot pink thread, okay? You can see already I'm hitting some denser stitching areas. I think my plan at the moment is going to be to come up to at least here and then kind of come into his face. I'm less worried about stitching in the ditch around the part of the body where I'm going to be doing that wood grain, because the texture of the wood grain will help him stand out. But here at the front of his face, where there's not going to be a lot of extra stitching to add texture or interest, I want to make sure that he's really going to pop against this nice green background. You can see it's taking a little bit of elbow grease over some of these heavy seams, even with a spoon foot. This foot is adjustable, but like with any foot, if I get it too high, it'll cause thread breaks. So it's that constant balance of ease of movement and balancing my tension. So I've used my stitch in the ditch to secure this densest part of his face and hand. And from here back, I'm going to fill this area with some nice wood grain quilting in order to imitate that wrinkly, bumpy skin that we saw in the photo that we looked at. I'm going to do this wood grain towards the tight side, but still with some good long traveling spaces. I want to think about how skin, especially kind of dry, scaly skin, will fold up, and try to imitate that with how I'm maneuvering my quilt. If you're using this quilting plan and you're a little unsure about that idea of making your quilting look like skin, you might find it helpful to have some Google images of the pink iguana pulled up. I'll just give you a little bit of point of reference of like, what does their skin look like? And what is the effect that I'm going for here? Notice, because this is wood grain, I'm definitely going to be doing some of those whirls that are so classic to the motif. But I'm also going to be doing plenty of just plain echoing to create skin folds and textures. there you have it, folks. Now I do just want to make a quick note about the way that I began to curve this wood grain motif as I came down towards the bottom. When I look at this iguana, it looks to me like this is his body and his head is curving around. So as we approached that curve, I wanted to actually indicate that a little bit with the quilting. So, two simple or relatively simple motifs, a little stitch in the ditch, but a whole lot of punch and texture all rolled into one.